Have you ever gotten to the flop with an incredibly strong hand? So strong that you immediately have visions of betting all three streets and maybe even stacking your opponent on the river? Perhaps your huge pre-flop raise got called when you have pocket aces. Maybe you even flop top two pair or even top set, and then after your flop continuation bet gets called, disaster. The front door flush gets there on the turn. What should you do now? Check, check fold, check call, bet big to protect against the four flush, bet small to make sure you're getting called by worse hands? If you've ever been on the turn asking yourself these types of questions, today's episode is for you. Tune in to hear how the CPG Wolves are coached to handle these pesky flush completing turns. I hope you enjoyed today's episode on how to play flush completing turns.
Welcome to another episode of Tactical Tuesday. I am, as always, joined by my co-host, Cash Game Killer, Jonathan Chai. How you doing, sir?
Doing pretty good. Pretty excited about this episode. I think this is one of the things that still to this day, one of the spots that still to this day is trickiest for me to navigate. So I'm pretty excited to talk about these flush completing turns and what you would do on them.
All right. I think, it's just a part of the poker player's experience where they have a hand that is really strong, that something unexpected happens that makes it not as strong as it once was. And then how do we navigate, right? I think everybody can relate to that experience. You three bet aces and the flop is 6, 7, 8, and you're like, oh my God, now what, right? So here, got a strong hand, and then hand's going to get a little bit weaker, and we still are forced to navigate downstream. So we'll start out with hand numero uno. We have an ace and a jack of different suits. Everybody folds. Hero's in the small blind. Hero opens to 3 big blinds. The big blind 3 bets to $40. So I guess this is first decision point. I think that probably 4 bet is going to be preferred here. But John, any opinion?
No, I think ace jack offsuit is just going to be one of my pre-flop 4 bet bluffs, blind versus blind. Maybe one thing to note here, and I don't know if this is going to have any implications downstream, is that this 3 bet from the big blind is definitely on the small side. Would expect something closer to $45 or $50. That 8 big blind 3 bet facing a 3 big blind open is, I don't know. It's at least something to note here. I don't think it's going to change my 3 bet or my 4 betting strategy in any meaningful way, but maybe there's something that happens post flop that we can read into a little bit more once we tie it together with this small 3 bet size. So I guess that's the only thing that I would note pre-flop.
Yeah, so it's 1 to 2 big blinds less than expectation. And so like when you say that you're going to be on alert post flop, what does that actually mean?
I'm suspicious already that this player is either some type of fish or white belt, I guess, or maybe a weak reg. Generally when I'm playing versus the stronger regs in my pool or the strongest regs in my pool, these pre-flop sizes are all essentially predetermined. A 3x open and either a 9 or 10 big blind 3 bet. So seeing 8 here is sticks out a lot. And I think that they're if you've watched previous Tactical Tuesday episodes, there are a lot of things that we do when we're playing against white belts that we can make exploitative adjustments versus certain sizing, certain lines, from white belts mean that we can drastically lower our call down threshold. Certain sizes are significantly under bluff, which means that we can start folding some pretty strong hands. So I think that's the type of stuff that I'd be on the lookout for is just what type of player can we start nailing this guy down as. And it's also very likely that nothing could happen post flop that lets us, play in any exploitative way. And that's why I'm saying I'm just suspicious at this point. I'm not going to make any big reads or any big adjustments as of yet.
Right. But it's just a note, right, that may inform something downstream or may inform something later on in the session against the same villain. So hero does go ahead and 4 bet and villain does go ahead and call. So there is $190 in the pot. The effective stack is 388, so the stack to pot ratio is 2. Flop is ace jack 7 with the ace 7 of diamonds. The hero has ace jack with the jack of diamonds. So Pretty good flop for hero. We have top 2 pair and 4-bet pot. The expectation for me is that hero is going to bet a quarter, and hero does in fact bet about a quarter, maybe 30%. But they bet small. They bet 55 into 190, and our opponent goes ahead and makes a call. I would personally expect villain's calling range to be pretty much any pair, pocket pairs with a diamond, maybe some pocket pairs without a diamond. 8s, 9s, and 10s, I believe, are almost always going to call because they have 3 straight on the flop. So, yeah, like most pairs, backdoor spades, and then, of course, the front door flush draws, I think, are also going to call, and would not expect villain to raise on an ace-high board in a 4-bet pot, blind versus blind, maybe ever. Like, I guess they're going to raise at some frequency, but super low would be my expectation.
I think they're going to call every gut shot as well. That's probably the one category.
Yeah. Every gut shot for sure. Every front door draw and every backdoor draw, essentially. So the turn is the 5 of diamonds. So sticking to the theme of today's episode, turn downgrades hero's hand, but hero does have the jack of diamonds, so that's going to reduce, villain's queen jack, king jack, jack 10 of diamond type hands, the pair plus draw that turns into a flush. So here, what do you think, John? Hero has top 2 pair and a jack high flush draw, and ace jack 7-5 with 3 diamonds.
Like I said, these spots are always feel super tricky to me. It's really nice that we have the jack of diamonds. It's going to reduce a whole bunch of flush combos that we would have to worry about if we didn't have the jack of diamonds. Hands like king jack of diamonds, queen jack of diamonds, jack 10 of diamonds. Those hands are all very likely to 3-bet pre-flop, all very likely to peel the 4-bet, and obviously are not folding the flop. So I guess the one thing that I will say, are like just off the bat, is that it's pretty nice to have a diamond in these spots when we encounter a flush completing turn. One thing too that's like very different about this node relative to other flush completer other spots or where we have the flush completing turn is that the SPR is just very, very low here, right? Like we're almost at SPR 1 already on the turn, which makes like some sizing options available to us that just wouldn't really be an option in, let's say, a single raise pot or even a 3-bet pot, where like jamming the turn here is, I think very much on the table. Villain only has 332 behind. There's 301 in the pot. So yeah, I think we can go a whole bunch of ways here. We can check and obviously very comfortably, either check jam or check call with this type of hand. I think we could bet the turn small and plan on jamming the river, which is, I assume, would be the kind of the normal plan on a non-flush completing turn. Or maybe we can even just jam the turn here and target some hands that are now probably in a spot where they've picked up a flush draw, a hand like ace queen with the queen of diamonds, for example. So yeah, I think we just have a whole bunch of options available to us here, and I don't know which one is best.
Yeah, so I think out of all those options, the one I can eliminate that personally feels the worst to me straight off is the jam option. I think that, villain, we don't really have to be that concerned about villain having a bigger flush draw. I think like king queen off with the king of diamonds or the queen of diamonds would be like the only combo that really villain has. Ace queen off with the queen of diamonds would be the other one. Ace king is going to jam pre, presumably, and probably shouldn't have like kings, probably shouldn't have king jack off with the king of diamonds. So I think like I don't like jam because that's going to fold out some like 8s with the 8 of diamonds when those hands are just, they're not drawing stone dead, but they're drawing very, very, very thin to 2 outs and are dominated by our flush draw. So like personally, I would much rather just bet a third here on the turn and try to get called by all of villains like pocket pairs and single diamond hands, as well as villains like ace X that I'm not exactly sure what ace 8 suited does facing a jam. I think they could very well fold top pair weak kicker facing a jam. So like to me, I feel like it's hard to get called by worse when we jam, even though the SPR is 1. Villain's just going to fold a lot of hands that are drawing like either stone dead or very, very close to dead. And I would much rather just bet small, get extra value out of those hands.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think that that's also like a really good argument for not checking, right? Like there are so many of those hands
Sure.
that are just going to call another third bet, but sorry, another bet on the turn, but won't bet themselves if you check to them, right?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think it's unlikely that eights or nines or tens with a diamond bets the turn just because we check. So there's definitely value to be had by betting that we wouldn't get by checking and say, I don't know, quote unquote, trapping this hand.
Right. Yeah, I agree. So my plan is just bet small, and get called by all their pair plus draws, and if they jam, then so be it. We call. I don't really know what we beat when they jam, but getting a good price. Um, with all of that said, Hero in this spot opts to check, so they they did not they did not follow the Tactical Tuesday script. Our opponent bets 140 into 301, which is like half pot, leaving themselves 192 back. I think at this point, like once Hero checks the turn, and by the way, these are Wolf submitted hands, so clearly I haven't even seen what Wolf does in these spots. So like, given that we check and given the villain bets, I don't really see a path other than jamming. I don't love jamming, but this is one of the reasons why I wanted to check. Can't really let villains like King Queen offs just bet the turn and not bet the river. And we're getting stacked by all the better hands anyway. So yeah, check jamming just seems like the obvious decision once we check.
Yeah, definitely think we can just target tons of worse hands too, right? I mean, there's going to be ace queen, like we said, that might get in there for this size. There's certainly hands like ace five suited that we've kind of coolered a little bit here with this turn. And also just like the occasional combo draw, right? Like the king queen offsuit that with a diamond that is now just getting an incredible price facing
Yep.
jam, given that bet they bet pretty big on this turn, right? And I think these, maybe this is like where we can start reading into like the pre-flop size a little bit, where like I would expect I would expect stronger regs or the strongest regs in the pool to probably pick a smaller size on the turn when they do bet the turn. So I don't know. I think it's very likely that they could have put themselves into a kind of a conundrum here with a hand like King Queen with a diamond, or maybe even just, Queen 10 with a diamond if they have the offsuit combo of that somehow. Which I guess wouldn't be crazy now that we've seen two kind of suspicious sizes pre-flop and here on the turn. Maybe they just, don't have great pre-flop ranges and peel too wide and have, hands like Queen 10 with a diamond, King 10 with a diamond, something like that. So yeah, I think we can definitely put some of those hands into a spot here, and definitely the top pairs and the two pairs are almost certainly calling off, I assume.
All right. Hero goes ahead and makes the call. So we are whichever Wolf played this hand, you're going to be in trouble at coaching next week. So river is the four of hearts. Hero checks. Villain checks behind, which is probably not the outcome that we want. And villain has ace queen of spades. So yeah, let's go ahead and chalk this up to the unnamed Wolf as a blunder in a 4-bet pot.
Yeah.
Moving along to ace 10 of clubs. So this hand is button versus big blind. So we 3-bet out of the big blind to 110. The button calls. We flop good as promised. Ace 10-7 with the ace 10 of clubs. By the way, if you're watching this right now, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on our analysis and whether or not you would have played the hands differently or any suggestions for future Tactical Tuesday episodes. So ace 10 of clubs. We flop top two. Ace 10-7 with a 7 of clubs. 3-bet pot. I think you could make an argument for a few sizes here. We could bet half pot. Maybe even we could bet 75% pot. But I think with top two pair on ace 10-7 with ace in the spades, we are almost certainly going to be betting.
Yeah, definitely a big market for hands that are going to call here, right? So many gut shots, flush draws, combo draws, pairs that peel the 3-bet and now are either top pair, mid pair, or some sort of 7. So Yep,
Yep.
really happy to see at least half pot here on this flop texture, or on this very dynamic flop texture, I guess. And I think this is a good way to start the hand.
Perfect. So we bet half. Villain calls. Turn is not the turn we are looking for. The queen of spades. So ace, queen, 10 of spades now. 7 of clubs. 447 in the pot. SPR's over 2. So, yeah, quite a sad turn card. And this one lives up to the billing of a very tricky turn card.
Yeah, the 4 gut shot combos and king jack suited get there. Now there's higher 2 pair, so all the ace queens are going to peel the 3-bet and call half pot on the flop. And then in addition to that, obviously I can't even count how many flushes villain is going to have on this turn. So yeah, a lot of hands get upgraded to now beat our flop top 2 pair. And this is always what these spots feel like, right? Where you're like, you have dreams of going for 3 streets of value on the flop and everything just comes to a screeching halt on the turn.
Dreams get shattered by the Black Mariah. So I'm gonna think about this for a second. I think like I actually think this card is fairly neutral as far as range versus range. I think we have, King Jack of spades, which is a royal. We have probably King 9 of spades in our range. Some suited connectors like 8-9 suited, 7-8 suited, 6-7 suited that we 3-bet with. I don't think villain has any extra flush draws that we don't have. In our at least at some frequency in our out of position 3-bet PFR range, big blind versus button. So yeah, the card is fairly neutral. So with 2 pair, I guess that if I'm going to have a betting range here on the turn, I'm probably betting small. And my plan would probably be to follow that up with another small bet on the river. And I think that's probably the only size that I would have here.
Yeah, I think that small size makes a lot of sense considering, like you said, like a lot of our bluffs on the flop just got there, right? Like our gut shots just got there, our flushes just got there. Or sorry, our flush draws on the flop just got there. So yeah, I think a definitely a smaller size makes sense. I think the one, like, maybe I worry about this a little bit too much, is that like the one thing that I'd be a little bit concerned about is just tipping villain off a little bit to the fact that we're not setting up for stacks or trying to play for stacks on the river. But I think that is going to be alleviated by the fact that you're also betting your very strong hands, your straights and your flushes here for a small size. And so like, as long as you're balanced in that sense, it's going to be very, very difficult for the player on the button to take advantage of you in some way and just be like, oh, like I'm just going to turn, ace jack into a bluff here, or jack 10 into a bluff here because it's obvious that they don't have a flush. So I think that's like, strategically, that's I think a really important part of this hand is that like you would also be betting, or you should also be betting on the small side with your very, very strong nutted hands, in order to not just be completely run over by a very perceptive player on the button.
Yeah, I mean, I think you need a strategy, and you can't just split sizes based on the strength of your hand. You need to be deploying a, strong holistic strategy, and just for the listener, if you want to think about it pre-flop, right? Like where you raise to, 2.5 or 3x pre, with both king jack off as well as aces, right? You don't bet $10 pre-flop with aces and then 10 big blinds pre-flop with aces and then 2 big blinds with king jack off. In this way, like we're being consistent with our strategy on the turn and essentially playing a stronger holistic strategy rather than kind of a Frankenstein's monster of like mixing different sizes, big and small and medium, based on the strength of our hand, because that tends to be extremely transparent to anybody that's paying attention. So with all of that said, Hero goes ahead and checks, which once again, I'd be betting small here, targeting, ace jack, targeting their pair plus draw type hands, king queen, queen jack, those hands that are like mid pocket pairs that have a spade. I just think villain's going to be checking back all the hands that we want to get value against right now. So like if villain bets here once again, I would be pretty scared. And villain does bet, so color me pretty scared here with 2 pair.
I'm gonna step in real quick and
Yeah.
go to bat for the wolf who decided to check this spot. I think you could build a very strong strategy with the checking range on this turn, right? As long as you do a good job of checking your entire range on the turn, you can just have some 2x jams on the river, right? With different parts of your range that, you know, you can just check a flush or a straight or something like that on the turn, and then have some pretty really big bets on the river and construct a strategy that way. So I don't think this, you know, I'm not exactly sure what this wolf's plan or strategy was, you know, assuming that the turn gets checked through, but don't think that the check is, you know, I don't think the check is.
Well, since you don't think it's damning, then I'm gonna give you the next strategic construction part. You know, what do you do facing a third on the turn when you have the nut flush? Like, once you make the decision to check and villain bets a third on the turn, like I get if the turn checks through, you can 2x rip. That makes sense. But now you've put yourself in quite the predicament here where, like, what do you check raise bluff with, right? Like, what's your low equity check raise on the turn? When you check call, like, what prevents villain from, like, betting the turn with, like, ace jack and then checking back rivers so that you win the minimum with when they have those types of hands? Or, you know, they have ace queen, right? Bet the turn, check back river. They have a set of sevens, bet the turn, maybe bet the river. I guess with a set of sevens, they would bet the river. But, like, you see what I'm getting at, right? Where, like, once you've kind of conceded initiative, it makes it really hard for you to control the price that's set at any point for the rest of the hand.
I guess the way to combat the small bet on the turn is just to have check jams on the turn with, you know, your low equity range being something like king queen, king of spades,
kings with the king of spades.
Yeah, I don't know if I bet half pot on the flop with kings with the king of spades, but definitely king queen. Yeah, maybe hand like queen jack. So
like a couple of combos of potential hands.
Yeah, it's hard to find. It's definitely hard to find a whole bunch of low equity ones.
Right. So hero calls. River's the tray of hearts. Hero, actually, so Hero finds something that's pretty cool. I'm gonna give them props because we didn't speak about this. Hero finds a 1/3 river donk, and now this is really interesting because this stops villain from being able to jam and stops them from being able to jam their value and check back their bluff catcher type hands like ace jack, etc. Right? It forces ace jack to call for one more bet, and I think this is like a pretty creative option. The disclaimer being that, like, you've got to do this with flushes sometimes too, and that's the more difficult part, is check calling the turn with nut flush and then betting a third. But if this is a strategy that, you know, they kind of constructed on the turn, then I suspect that they probably would be check calling turn and then donking river with their flushes as well. This is pretty high level play, pretty impressive, honestly.
Yeah. I knew I trusted this wolf.
Say that again.
I said I knew I trusted this wolf on the turn when he checked that. I didn't know exactly how he was going to fight back, but you're right. This is really, really cool, and it does alleviate the concern of well, it just sucks that they just get to bet a third on the turn with ace jack and check back the river or something like that. So yeah, I really, really like this play as well.
Perfect. So hero donks a third and villain calls, and hero gets one more small bet out of the a7 of hearts. So villain flop top and bottom, hero flop top two. By all rights, I think the hero should be upset about the queen of spades on the turn, because, man, what a cooler that got ruined by the turn card. And so, with that said, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Tactical Tuesday on what to do when you flop a very strong hand and the turn kind of poops on you from the sky and makes your life very, very difficult and very uncomfortable. Once again, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. And that's all I got for this week.
See you next week.
Till next week. Don't miss out on our next great poker adventure. Hit that subscribe button and join the CPG family.
This is Tactical Tuesday on Chasing Poker Greatness with your hosts, Brad Wilson and John Chai. Coach Brad approved. Are you a lone wolf searching for the ultimate pack? The CPG Wolf program is a close-knit brotherhood hell-bent on one thing only: chasing poker greatness. Powered by bleeding-edge wolf strats and led by Coach Brad and his lieutenants, CPG Wolves are systematically prepared for almost any spot they'll encounter on the green felt. If you want to plug into an elite team and have a step-by-step game plan to realize your full poker potential, you can apply at cpgwolves.com. Space is limited, and the pack is only as strong as its weakest member. So only the hungriest, grittiest, and most driven will be accepted into the program. Applications are open at cpgwolves.com.